When we think of the fall of Rome, the common image that comes to mind is predictable: barbarians at the gates, decimated legions, or emperors poisoned in the shadows of their palaces. However, empires rarely collapse solely due to external attacks. They rot from within, driven by various internal factors, and the most destructive force that accelerates this decay has always been the same: money. Rome did not fall simply because of invasions or corruption. It crumbled because its currency was debased. The lessons from this collapse remain hauntingly relevant for every modern economy that believes it can manipulate money without consequence. For centuries, the backbone of the Roman economy was the silver denarius. First minted around 211 BC, it was nearly pure silver and served as a trusted medium of exchange both inside and outside the empire. Roman soldiers were paid in it. Merchants demanded it. Citizens saved in it. The denarius was more than just currency. It was a symbol of trust cast in metal. The power of the empire and the value of its money were inextricably linked. As long as people trusted Rome, they trusted its coin. Managing an empire, however, was expensive. Legions had to be paid, roads and aqueducts built, and wars financed. By the 2nd century AD, Rome was struggling to protect its borders against Germanic tribes, fight the Parthians in the east, and manage internal unrest. Tax revenues simply could not keep up with military spending. To cope, emperors turned to an ancient method: currency debasement. Instead of raising taxes, they started reducing the silver content within the denarius. The numbers tell the story. Under Emperor Augustus, the denarius was about 95% silver. By the early 3rd century, under Caracalla, that dropped to roughly 50%. By the time of Emperor Gallienus, the silver content had plummeted to below 5%. What was once a precious metal coin had become a silver-plated bronze disc. The public could see it, and they could feel it. Inflation ensued. As the real value of the money evaporated, prices soared. A measure of wheat that once cost a single denarius now required dozens. This was not some abstract economic theory. It was a reality that devastated the lives of ordinary Romans. Soldiers demanded higher pay to cover the rising cost of living. Merchants stopped accepting debased coins, preferring gold or turning to barter. Local economies reverted to direct trade because money was no longer a reliable store of value. As trust waned, emperors minted even more low-quality coins, wrongly believing that quantity could replace quality. It was a vicious cycle, the same pattern seen in countless inflationary crises throughout history. The crisis reached its peak during the crisis of the 3rd century. Between 235 and 284 AD, Rome suffered through 50 years of invasions, plagues, civil wars, and economic collapse. Emperors rose and fell in quick succession, often assassinated within months. Behind this political chaos lay a broken financial system. Emperor Diocletian attempted to save the system. In 301 AD, he issued the Edict on Maximum Prices, fixing the cost of over 1,000 goods and services, from grain to labor wages. Breaking the rules was punishable by death. The result was a catastrophe. When money has lost its value, prices cannot be controlled by decree. The black market exploded and official trade ground to a halt. People quickly learned a hard truth: laws cannot make a debased currency valuable again. Eventually, Rome abandoned the denarius entirely. Constantine the Great introduced the solidus, a high-purity gold coin that brought stability to the Eastern Roman, or Byzantine, Empire for centuries. But for the Western Roman Empire, it was too late. The debasement of the denarius had hollowed out Rome's economic core. The fall of Rome was not a single event. It was a long process of dissolution. The collapse of the currency was one of the sharpest links in that chain. When we look at the 20th century, the echoes are even louder. Following the First World War, Germany faced crushing reparations. To meet its obligations, the government printed money. By 1923, hyperinflation was out of control. A loaf of bread that cost 1 mark before the war rose to over 200 billion marks by the autumn of 1923. People carried their wages in wheelbarrows. The middle class was wiped out, and the economic ruin laid the groundwork for the rise of Hitler. A similar process occurred in Zimbabwe in the early 2000s, where inflation reached approximately 89.76% in 2008. Once again, a government thought it could cheat reality, and once again the people paid the price. Today's situation is different because the system is global. Rome's crisis was imperial, Weimar's was national, Zimbabwe's was local. Today, The world relies on fiat currencies, high debt levels, and central banks capable of printing trillions at the first sign of a crisis. History teaches us that the greatest burden will again fall on wage earners, retirees, and savers. The lessons for the individual are clear. Understand that inflation is rarely accidental. It is a direct result of economic policy. Recognize that true wealth is not just money or digital digits. Land, skills, productive businesses, and assets that generate value are more resilient in the long run. Do not assume that any economic stability will last forever. The fall of Rome reminds us that financial systems can collapse first slowly, then suddenly. When trust disappears, money loses its meaning. When money loses its meaning, the fabric of society begins to unravel. Contracts fail, trade breaks down, and state legitimacy crumbles. Barbarians may strike the final blow, but destruction usually starts inside the treasury. History doesn't repeat exactly, but if you don't understand it, the consequences can be severe.